Ready to go? Well, thanks very much for joining us. This morning I convened a meeting of our Cabinet and also a full meeting of the Federal Parliamentary Labor Party caucus to discuss and consider the Climate Change Authority's independent expert advice on Australia's 2035 emissions reduction target. Our government knows that climate change is real, and we want to continue to seize the economic opportunity that the energy transition offers our nation. We listen to the science and we act in Australia's national interest, and that is why we're acting on the advice of the Climate Change Authority. And today I'm joined by the two ministers, the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, the Treasurer, but also by Matt Keane, the Chair of the Climate Change Authority. Today I announce that we have accepted their advice that Australia's 2035 emissions target be 62 to 70%. This is a responsible target, backed by the science, backed by a practical plan to get there and built on proven technology. It's the right target to protect our environment, to protect and advance our economy and jobs, and to ensure that we act in our national interest and in the interest of this and future generations. Setting a 2035 target is a compulsory part of Australia's commitment to the Paris Agreement to keep temperatures from rising to dangerous levels. Alongside our 2035 target today and the release of this report here, Australia's net zero plan going forward, we're announcing significant new measures that build on our existing plans. Minister Bowen will take you through those measures shortly, but first I would like to add these points. Our plan for the next 10 years builds on the foundations that we have laid over the last three. Overwhelmingly, the three areas where we need to reduce most of our emissions come from electricity, transport and industry. On electricity, we'll continue to support clean energy with renewables backed by gas and battery storage. In 2022, we inherited a national energy grid that had been run into the ground. We know that 24 out of 28 coal-fired power stations announced their closure. Under the former government, they announced 23 different energy policies and didn't land one of them. That chaos and denial and delay led to a bigger challenge than what have occurred if they had acted on the science earlier. Today, we're announcing $2 billion for the Clean Energy Finance Corporation to continue to drive downward pressure on electricity prices. This will help to accelerate long-term renewable projects right across our nation. In addition to that, we know that getting emissions down in the resources sector and heavy industry is the next major area and will help heavy industry to do the heavy lifting. Today we're announcing a new net zero $5 billion fund in the National Reconstruction Fund to help large industry decarbonise and scale up more renewables and low emissions manufacturing. And this builds on what we've already been doing through the safeguard mechanism. And finally, lowering transport emissions will help us bring this target home by expanding the use of electric vehicles, our new vehicle efficiency standard, and investing in more curbside charging facilities. We announced yesterday, of course, $1.1 billion to encourage more production of clean fuels in Australia. And today we're further announcing $40 million to accelerate the rollout of curbside and fast EV charging. Beyond these three areas, Australia already has a superpower, our people, and our people are acting. We've seen that with the take-up, which has exceeded most people's expectations of batteries in order to store energy that's being produced on Australian rooftops through solar. This shows the significant amount of progress which has been made. It's being made at around 1,000 every weekday are being installed around the country. Like anything, as any technology gets better, it becomes cheaper and more people embrace it. It isn't a linear process. It happens in leaps and bounds. And since May 2022, we've added over 18 gigawatts of renewables, wind and solar, to the grid. Wind and solar capacity is up 45% since we came to government, enough to power some 6 million households. And I'll conclude with this point, that a typical solar panel today is almost 10 times more powerful than it was 20 years ago, and almost 10 times cheaper. One of the things that explains why this progress is good for households, as well as being good for our national economy. I'll turn to the Energy Minister, then we'll hear from the Treasurer, and then from Mr King, and then we'll be happy to take your questions.
Thanks very much, Prime Minister. The global shift to clean energy is the biggest economic transformation since the Industrial Revolution, and it presents Australia with our best ever economic opportunity. If we get it right, if we make the right investments at the right time, we can grow our economy, create good jobs for Australians. And today, the Albanese government decided to seize that opportunity. The Climate Change Authority puts it well in their advice to me. They say, we have an abundance of solar and wind above the ground and a periodic table of critical minerals below the ground. And that is our key to economic prosperity. We can use these advantages to power hundreds of thousands of jobs and new investment to set us up for a bright economic future, making the most of our strengths and building our decarbonisation journey here and helping the rest of the world. So that's why I recommended to the Cabinet, and the Cabinet recommended to the caucus and the government, that we accept the advice of the Climate Change Authority. Our target setting process is the best, most rigorous in the world, set out by the Climate Change Act that this government put into place. It makes clear what the Climate Change Authority must consider and makes clear what I must consider in considering their advice. And I want to thank the Chair, Mr Keane, for his excellent work with his board. He's pulled on his experience as Treasurer and Energy Minister of Australia's most populous state, to determine what is achievable and ambitious and what can be done in a realistic fashion. And the board, which also consists of the chief scientists and former secretaries of the Department of Energy and Climate at the state level, people with strong industry and scientific background, has made this advice to us, and we're very pleased to accept it. As the Prime Minister said, we also have to show how we'll achieve these targets. The Net Zero plan, this updated plan today that we're releasing, is that path, together with the 6 sector plans that we're releasing today, which show industry and investors what the government thinks is the most feasible decarbonisation pathway beyond 2030. And those plans contain key initiatives, some of which the Prime Minister referred to. The $2 billion recapitalisation of the Clean Energy Fund with an updated mandate to focus on the rollout of renewables, which is our cheapest form of energy. The $5 billion fund within the National Reconstruction Fund. Yesterday, the Treasurer and I announced $1.1 billion to support the Australian cleaner fuels industry. $40 million of curbside charging, because a lot of people want to buy, a lot of Australians want to buy an EV but are worried that they don't have access to a driveway or they can't put chargers in their apartments at the moment. So this will unlock that capacity. And also $50 million to support Australia's sporting clubs, reduce their bills and emissions at the same time. So all these investments are important, as well as new investments in energy performance and energy efficiency. We'll create for the first time a statement of demand opportunities. We have an energy statement of opportunities, a gas statement of opportunities. We'll ask AEMO to prepare a demand statement of opportunities, and we'll expand NATERS and NEIGHBOURS, the tools which enable households and businesses to test the energy efficiency of their premises and make sure they are getting value for money and are driving energy efficiency as much as possible. All this together amounts to a serious, credible, robust plan which will help us achieve our targets. And when we took office in 2022, we inherited 10 years of denial and delay, a government which had spent 10 years arguing about whether climate change is real. We devoted our first term to ensuring that we're helping Australia get match fit for these opportunities. And today, we build on that and outline the path to 2035 and the path to 2050, a path which shows economic prosperity, a path which shows jobs and investment, and Australia reducing our emissions. And with Australians installing 1,000 batteries a day, taking up EVs at record rates, That tells me Australians are keen on that journey. They want a government which helps them unlock those opportunities, and that's exactly what we intend to do.
Thanks very much, Chris, and everybody. An orderly transition to net zero is a golden economic opportunity for Australia, and the Treasury modelling that we are releasing today makes that abundantly clear. This is a huge economic opportunity for our country and its people, and we would be mad not to grasp it. The Treasury modelling quantifies the nature and the magnitude of this economic opportunity, and it compares that with two realistic alternatives as well. We asked the Treasury to model some scenarios to help inform the deliberations of the Cabinet and also to underpin the announcement that we are making today. We asked the Treasury to model a 65% target because we needed the time to put that modelling together, and we wanted to make sure it was within the draft range that the CCA was consulting on. So we asked them to model 65, which was obviously within the target that we are announcing today, and we asked them for three scenarios. The baseline scenario would see our economy $2.2 trillion bigger by 2050, an extra $36,000 per person wealthier, with 5.1 million more jobs and investment up 80%. Now that's the baseline scenario, which represents the trajectory that the government believes is the baseline coming from the arrangements that we're announcing today. We also asked for an upside scenario, which is a scenario where we make the most of the tremendous export opportunities presented by the global shift to net zero. And again, the economy would be much bigger under that scenario, and there'd be $68 billion more in sustainable exports as a consequence. We also asked the Treasury to model the disorderly transition, the alternative. If we leave the heavy lifting to others at the start of the 2040s and where our country and our economy would need to scramble to hit net zero by 2050. And in the disorderly transition, the economy would be cumulatively $1.2 trillion smaller than the baseline scenario, and you'll see in the press release more like $2 trillion cumulatively smaller than the upside renewable exports scenario. Under the disorderly transition, there would be lower wages and higher electricity prices as well. And so the Treasury modelling, which underpins the decisions that we've taken in this net zero plan, makes 5 overarching conclusions. Firstly, Australia can be a big beneficiary if we continue to take decisive action and set clear targets. Secondly, cheaper and cleaner energy will make us more competitive in our economy. Thirdly, clear and credible action means more jobs, higher wages and higher living standards. Fourthly, an orderly plan gives business the clarity and certainty to invest. And fifth overarching conclusion is that a disorderly transition means fewer jobs, less investment, lower wages and living standards and higher power prices in a smaller economy. Now you'll also see when you go through the Treasury modelling that the only scenario which would be worse than a disorderly transition would be to abandon net zero completely. That would be a disaster for our economy, and some of the commentary in the Treasury document today makes that very clear. I also want to make it clear that the Treasury modelling is different to the modelling that Matt and his team sought from the CSIRO, and also different to the BCA modelling that you've seen in recent weeks. The BCA looked at the sorts of investment that we would need to see in our economy. At Matt's encouragement, the CSIRO looked at the pace of getting to net zero. But even though this modelling has very different tasks, they look at very different sets of metrics. The conclusions at the top level are clear and they are consistent. And the conclusion is this: an orderly transition is good for our economy and private investment will be the key. So we're announcing this target today and we're releasing all of this detailed modelling to give investors the clarity and the certainty that they need to invest with confidence. Now, this plan that we're releasing today is not some sort of optional extra. It's absolutely central to the modern, prosperous, competitive economy that we need to build to lift living standards in this country. Australians will be big beneficiaries of an orderly shift to net zero, and that's made even clearer by this modelling today. The target we're announcing today is right for the economy, it's right for the environment, and it's consistent with our obligations to future generations as well, and the modelling makes that really clear. There's lots of detail in there. I encourage you to get into it. But before I hand over to Matt to say a few more things, I just wanted to briefly welcome the fact that the unemployment rate has stayed at 4.2% today. In really uncertain global conditions, our labour market has been a source of genuine strength. More than 1.1 million jobs created under this Labor government, the lowest average unemployment of any government in the last 50 years. All Australians should be proud that while the global economy has been uncertain and volatile and unpredictable, we've been able to keep unemployment low, and we see that again in the figures today. These figures have been released alongside new migration figures as well. Net overseas migration in the figures today has now fallen for 6 consecutive quarters. 110,000 people net overseas migration in the March quarter, compared with almost 129,000 the March quarter before. We are now 17,000 people lower than the Treasury forecast for net overseas migration. We are now 40% below the peak that we saw in net overseas migration following COVID. I'll hand over to Matt, and then the PM's going to direct traffic for the questions.
Well, thank you, Treasurer, Prime Minister and Minister. Today is about delivering 2 very real and critical outcomes for every single Australian. Firstly, opportunity. Opportunity for our people, for our farmers, for our businesses, for our regions, for our cities and for our economy. And secondly, delivering a cleaner, safer and better world for future generations of Australians. The Climate Change Authority was tasked by our national parliament with plotting the environmental waypoints that will lead a stronger Australia to a net zero future. We considered over 500 submissions from stakeholders and conducted over 560 meetings and events. We considered the best available science, the best-in-class economic modelling, and we built a bottom-up analysis of every sector of the economy to understand what each sector of the economy could contribute to this mission. We sought targets that will future-proof our industries, our economy, our way of life and our planet. Today I'm pleased on behalf of the authority to release a body of work that is deliberate, considered, steeped in science and takes into account the national and global environment. Because we need to be flexible to deal with whatever challenges are thrown at us, we've recommended a target range. The work that the authority has established, clearly and undeniably, is that Australia's clean energy transition is an economic growth opportunity, not a drag. There is a path that will deliver benefits and savings, not costs. Our leading scientific body, the CSIRO, has done that work. This is a range that I'm hopeful that we can overachieve on. Our range positions Australia as a global leader on climate ambition. In fact, we are presenting a higher ambition than most other advanced economies. We can leverage our nation's natural gifts that are capable of supercharging a renewable energy transition and a march towards net zero. The modelling shows that every sector of the economy can benefit from this transition. Now, the Paris Agreement calls on countries to set their highest possible ambition in light of their national circumstances. And our bottom-up analysis proves that we've done exactly that. This target requires Australia to cut its emissions by half over the decade. It's ambitious, but it's absolutely feasible. Today's report is ambitious for Australia. It's ambitious for a prosperous future that places Australia's people and Australia's industries in the driver's seat on the global push to protect our planet. Today is a point in time when our country sets a deliberate path for that future.